The whip cracked through the frozen air like a gunshot, and Winifred Zimmerman's scream tore through the winter silence of Helena, Montana, cutting straight into Isaac Bradley's chest as he rode into town that bitter December morning of 1881. Isaac pulled his horse to an immediate halt, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air as he took in the scene unfolding in the town square. A woman knelt in the snow, her dark hair plastered to her face with sweat despite the cold, her hands bound to a wooden post. Her dress was torn at the back, revealing angry red welts that bled fresh crimson onto the pristine white ground. A man in a fine wool coat stood behind her, raising his arm for another strike, while a small crowd watched with expressions ranging from horror to grim satisfaction. "That is what happens to whores who disgrace good families," the man shouted, his voice carrying across the square. "My son is dead not 3 months, and already she carries a bastard child in her belly. She has dishonored his memory and my family name." Isaac did not hesitate. He dismounted in one fluid motion, his boots crunching through the snow as he strode forward. The whip was already descending when Isaac's hand caught the man's wrist, stopping it mid-strike with such force that the older man stumbled backward. "That is enough," Isaac said, his voice low and dangerous. The man, who Isaac now recognized as Theodore Hartwell, one of the wealthiest mine owners in Helena, yanked his arm free and glared at the stranger who dared interrupt his punishment. "This is family business. The woman was married to my son, and she has shamed us all." "I do not care if she insulted the president himself," Isaac replied. "No man whips a woman while I am breathing." Theodore's face turned purple with rage. "How dare you interfere? Do you know who I am?" "I know what you are," Isaac said. "And if you raise that whip again, you will answer to me." Theodore laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "You think you can threaten me, boy? I own half this town. The sheriff answers to me." Isaac's jaw tightened. Behind Theodore, Winifred had sagged against the post, her breathing ragged and shallow. Blood continued to seep through her torn dress, staining the snow beneath her and spreading pools of red. Isaac could see her belly, swollen with perhaps 5 or 6 months of pregnancy, and something fierce and protective surged through him. "Let her go," Isaac said quietly. "Or what?" Theodore reached for the pistol at his hip. Isaac was faster. His hand moved with practiced precision, drawing his Colt and firing in one smooth motion. The bullet caught Theodore in the shoulder, spinning him around. The older man's gun fell into the snow, and he clutched at his wound, staring at Isaac with shock and rage. "You shot me," Theodore gasped. "You actually shot me." "Be grateful I aimed high," Isaac said. He kept his gun trained on Theodore as he moved toward Winifred, using his knife to cut through the ropes binding her to the post. She collapsed forward, and Isaac caught her before she could hit the ground, holstering his weapon and lifting her carefully into his arms. Winifred's eyes fluttered open, focusing on Isaac's face with difficulty. She was beautiful despite her pain, with high cheekbones and full lips now pale from blood loss. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Someone who does not abide cruelty," Isaac replied. He looked around at the gathered crowd, his eyes cold. "If anyone wants to stop me, now is the time." No one moved. Theodore was being helped to his feet by 2 of his men, still clutching his shoulder and cursing. "You will hang for this," he snarled at Isaac. "I will see you dead before spring." Isaac did not bother responding. He carried Winifred to his horse, managing to mount while holding her against his chest. She was unconscious now, her head lolling against his shoulder. He could feel the warmth of her blood soaking through his coat. He rode hard through the snow-covered streets of Helena, asking directions from a woman sweeping her porch until he found the doctor's house. Dr. Samuel Chen answered Isaac's pounding with obvious irritation that turned to alarm when he saw the woman in Isaac's arms. "Bring her inside quickly," the doctor said, ushering them into a warm examination room. "Put her on the table there." Isaac laid Winifred down as gently as he could, stepping back to let the doctor work. Dr. Chen cut away the remains of her dress, revealing the full extent of the damage. Isaac felt his stomach turn at the sight of the deep lacerations crisscrossing her back. "Who did this?" Dr. Chen asked as he began cleaning the wounds. "Theodore Hartwell," Isaac said. "He was whipping her in the town square." The doctor's expression darkened. "That man thinks his money puts him above human decency. Is it true you shot him? News travels fast. Helena is not a large town." Dr. Chen worked in silence for several minutes, his hands gentle but efficient. She has lost a fair amount of blood. The next 24 hours will be critical. And the baby? He pressed his stethoscope to Winifred's belly, listening intently. The heartbeat is strong, thankfully. The child seems to have weathered this horror better than its mother. Will she live? Isaac asked. I cannot say for certain, but she is young and was healthy before this attack. Dr. Chen looked up at Isaac. You should know that Theodore Hartwell will not let this go. He has the sheriff in his pocket, and most of the town council too. You will need to leave Helena as soon as possible. I am not leaving until I know she will be all right, Isaac said firmly. Dr. Chen smiled slightly. You may have just thrown your life away for a woman whose name you do not even know. Her name is Winifred, Isaac said, surprising himself. He had heard Theodore shout it during his tirade. Winifred Zimmerman, I think he said her maiden name was. Winifred Hartwell, the doctor corrected. Though I suspect she would prefer to return to her maiden name now. She was married to Theodore's son Robert for barely a year before he died in a mining accident. The whole town knew she was carrying his child. He paused in his work. Theodore claimed the child could not be Robert's because of the timing. He called her unfaithful in front of everyone. Isaac felt anger rise in him again. A man who would whip a pregnant woman is capable of any lie. I agree, Dr. Chen said quietly. But Theodore Hartwell's version of events is the one most people will believe. He has power, and power writes its own truth in places like Helena. Isaac pulled up a chair and sat down heavily, watching as the doctor continued to clean and bandage Winifred's back. She stirred occasionally, whimpering in pain even in unconsciousness. Each sound drove a spike through Isaac's heart. He had never been the kind of man who acted on impulse. His years working as a ranch hand and occasional guide had taught him to think before moving, to weigh consequences carefully. But something about seeing Winifred bound and bleeding in the snow had bypassed all rational thought. You can rest in the room next door, Dr. Chen said, after he finished stitching the worst of the lacerations. I will watch her through the night. I will stay here, Isaac said. The doctor studied him for a long moment, then nodded. As you wish. There is coffee in the kitchen if you need it. The night passed slowly. Isaac dozed in the chair, waking at every small sound Winifred made. Dr. Chen checked on them regularly, monitoring her pulse and temperature. Toward dawn, her fever spiked, and the doctor worked to bring it down with cool compresses, while Isaac paced the small room like a caged animal. Talk to her, Dr. Chen suggested. Sometimes a familiar voice can help pull someone back from the edge. She does not know me, Isaac protested. Then introduce yourself. Isaac pulled his chair close to the examination table and took Winifred's hand carefully, mindful of her injuries. Her skin was too hot, her breathing shallow. Miss Zimmerman, he began awkwardly. My name is Isaac Bradley. I am not much good at speeches, but the doctor says you might be able to hear me, so I thought I should say something. He paused, unsure how to continue. I am from Wyoming originally, worked ranches most of my life, since I was 14. I came to Montana looking for work, maybe a chance to save enough to start my own spread someday. He laughed quietly. That plan might have to wait now, seeing as I just shot one of the richest men in the territory. Winifred's fingers twitched slightly in his hand. Encouraged, Isaac kept talking. I have 2 sisters back in Cheyenne, Sarah and Margaret. They are always telling me I need to settle down, find a good woman, start a family. I tell them I am only 26. There is plenty of time for all that. He brushed a strand of damp hair from Winifred's forehead. But seeing you hurt like that, something just broke loose inside me. I could not stand by and let it happen. He talked through the early morning hours, telling her stories about growing up in Wyoming, about the time he broke his arm falling off a horse when he was 12, about learning to shoot from his father, about the endless sky over the prairie. Gradually, Winifred's fever began to break. Her breathing grew deeper and more regular. When the sun rose, painting the room in shades of gold and pink, Winifred's eyes opened. She stared at the ceiling for a moment, confusion evident on her face, before slowly turning her head to look at Isaac. You are real, she whispered. I thought perhaps I had dreamed you. I am real, Isaac confirmed, squeezing her hand gently. How do you feel? Like I was whipped, she said, attempting a weak smile. Which I suppose I was. How did I get here? I carried you after cutting you loose. The doctor has been taking care of you all night. You had a bad fever, but it broke a few hours ago." Winifred closed her eyes, tears leaking from the corners. "You shot Theodore Hartwell for me. I remember that much. You should not have done that. He will make you pay." "Let him try," Isaac said. "You do not understand." Winifred opened her eyes again, and Isaac saw the fear in them. "He has power here, money, influence. He can destroy you with a word." "Then maybe I should not stay in Helena," Isaac said, "and maybe you should not either." Winifred stared at him. "Leave? Where would I go? I have nothing, no money, no family. Theodore saw to that. After Robert died, he froze all access to the accounts. He said I was trying to steal from the family, that the baby was not really Robert's child." Her voice broke. "He lied. I was faithful to Robert, always. The baby is his. But Theodore needed someone to blame for his son's death, and I was convenient." Isaac felt his anger rising again, but forced it down. Winifred needed his help, not his rage. "Do you have anywhere you can go? Friends, family, and other territories?" She shook her head. "My parents died of cholera when I was 16. I was working as a teacher when I met Robert. He was kind, gentle, nothing like his father. We were happy together, even though Theodore never approved of me. He wanted Robert to marry someone from a wealthy family, not a school teacher with no connections." She touched her belly carefully. "When Robert died in that mine collapse, part of me died too. The only thing that kept me going was knowing I carried his child. And then Theodore started spreading his lies." "Why did he do that?" Isaac asked. "What did he gain from destroying your reputation?" "Control," Winifred said bitterly. "If the child was not Robert's, then Theodore had no obligation to support us. He could throw me out with nothing and claim I brought it on myself. He wanted me to leave town quietly, to disappear. But I refused. This baby is Robert's son or daughter, and that child deserves the Hartwell name and inheritance." She laughed without humor. "So Theodore decided to punish me publicly, to make an example of me. He thought if he humiliated me enough, I would run." "But you did not run," Isaac said softly. "No, I would not give him that satisfaction." Winifred met Isaac's eyes. "Until he started whipping me, then I just wanted to die." "You are not going to die," Isaac said firmly. "You are going to heal, and you are going to have your baby, and you are going to live a good life. I am going to make sure of that." "Why?" Winifred asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why would you risk everything for a stranger?" Isaac was quiet for a moment, searching for the right words. "My pa used to say that you judge a man's character by what he does when there is no benefit to himself. I looked at you tied to that post, bleeding in the snow, while people watched and did nothing, and I knew I had a choice. I could ride on, tell myself it was not my business, save myself the trouble. Or I could do what was right. Consequences be damned." He smiled slightly. "I never was good at walking away from trouble." Dr. Chen entered the room, carrying a tray with soup and bread. "I see our patient is awake. That is an excellent sign. Winifred, you need to eat something to rebuild your strength." Isaac helped Winifred sit up carefully, supporting her with pillows while the doctor checked her bandages. She managed to eat half the soup before exhaustion overtook her again. As she drifted back to sleep, Isaac excused himself to step outside. The cold air hit him like a slap, but it felt good after the close warmth of the doctor's house. Helena was fully awake now, people moving through the streets going about their business. Isaac noticed several glances thrown his way, some curious, some hostile. Word of his confrontation with Theodore Hartwell had clearly spread through the town. A man in a sheriff's badge approached, his hand resting on his gun belt. He was older, perhaps 50, with gray streaking his brown hair and a weathered face that had seen too much. "You would be Isaac Bradley," the sheriff said. It was not a question. "I would be," Isaac confirmed. "I am Sheriff Dawson. I need you to come with me to the jail to answer some questions about the shooting of Theodore Hartwell." "Is that an arrest?" Isaac asked calmly. Sheriff Dawson hesitated. "That depends on your answers. Theodore is claiming attempted murder. Says you rode into town and shot him without provocation." "Without provocation," Isaac repeated slowly. "That is his version?" "It is. What is yours?" Isaac told the story exactly as it happened, leaving nothing out. The sheriff listened without interrupting, his expression neutral. When Isaac finished, Sheriff Dawson was quiet for a long moment. "I believe you," the sheriff finally said. "And between you and me, Theodore Hartwell has needed someone to stand up to him for years. But belief does not change facts. He has filed charges, and I have to take you in. There will be a hearing with the judge tomorrow." "What about Winifred?" Isaac asked. "She needs protection. If I am locked up and Theodore comes for her." "I will post a deputy outside the doctor's house," Sheriff Dawson promised. "Theodore is still recovering from his shoulder wound. Doctor says he will be laid up for at least a week. That gives us some time to sort this mess out properly." Isaac wanted to argue, but he knew the sheriff was right. Running would only make things worse. He nodded slowly. "All right, but I want to tell Winifred first. She should not wake up and find me gone without explanation." "Fair enough," the sheriff agreed. Isaac went back inside and found Winifred awake again, talking quietly with Dr. Chen. She looked alarmed when Isaac explained the situation. "They cannot arrest you for saving my life," she protested. "Theodore filed charges," Isaac said. "I have to answer for them. But the sheriff seems like a decent man. I think this will work out." "You do not know Theodore," Winifred said desperately. "He will find a way to make you pay. Please, just leave town while you can. I will be fine." Isaac knelt beside her bed so he could look directly into her eyes. "I am not leaving you. Not now, not ever, if you will have me around. I know that is a strange thing to say to someone I just met, but it is the truth. From the moment I saw you in that square, something changed in me. I cannot explain it better than that." Winifred's eyes filled with tears. "You are either the bravest man I have ever met or the most foolish." "Probably both," Isaac admitted. He stood up, touching her cheek briefly. "I will be back as soon as I can. Dr. Chen and the sheriff's deputy will look after you." The jail was a small stone building on the edge of town. Sheriff Dawson locked Isaac in a cell, but did not handcuff him or treat him roughly. "The hearing is set for 10 o'clock tomorrow morning," the sheriff said. "Judge Morrison will preside. He is fair mostly, though he and Theodore play cards together on occasion." "Wonderful," Isaac muttered. "Get some rest," Sheriff Dawson advised. "I will have food sent over from the hotel." The night in jail passed slowly. Isaac lay on the narrow cot, staring at the ceiling and thinking about Winifred. He had told her the truth. Something had shifted in him when he saw her suffering. It was not just attraction, though he could not deny she was beautiful. It was something deeper, more fundamental, a recognition perhaps, a sense that his life had been leading to that exact moment in the town square. The next morning, Sheriff Dawson brought Isaac a basin of water to wash and a clean shirt. "Best look presentable for the judge," he said. The hearing was held in the town hall, a large wooden building with a potbelly stove that did little to chase away the cold. Judge Morrison was a heavy-set man with iron gray hair and shrewd blue eyes. Theodore Hartwell sat at one table with his lawyer, his arm in a sling and a bandage visible beneath his shirt. Isaac sat alone at another table with no representation. "This hearing will come to order," Judge Morrison announced. "We are here to determine whether Isaac Bradley should stand trial for the attempted murder of Theodore Hartwell. Mr. Hartwell, present your case." Theodore's lawyer, a thin man named Pemberton, stood up and launched into a dramatic account of the shooting. According to his version, Isaac had ridden into town specifically looking for Theodore, had provoked him without cause, and had shot him in cold blood. There was no mention of Winifred or the whipping. When Pemberton finished, Judge Morrison turned to Isaac. "Do you have anything to say in your defense, Mr. Bradley?" Isaac stood up. He was not comfortable speaking in front of groups, but he forced himself to meet the judge's eyes steadily. "Everything the lawyer just said is a lie, Your Honor. I did not come to Helena looking for Theodore Hartwell. I had never heard of him before yesterday. I rode into town and saw him whipping a pregnant woman in the square. I intervened to stop him. He reached for his gun first. I only fired to prevent him from shooting me." "Do you have any witnesses to support this version of events?" Judge Morrison asked. "There were at least 20 people in the square watching," Isaac said. "They all saw what happened." Theodore's lawyer jumped up. "That is irrelevant, Your Honor. My client had every right to discipline his daughter-in-law as he saw fit. She dishonored his family. What happened in the square was a private matter." "Private?" Isaac's voice rose despite his efforts to stay calm. "He was whipping her in public, in front of half the town. There was nothing private about it." Judge Morrison held up his hand for silence. "Sheriff Dawson, were there witnesses?" "Yes, Your Honor," the sheriff confirmed. I have statements from several people who were present. And what do these statements say? Sheriff Dawson looked uncomfortable. Most of them support Mr. Bradley's version of events, Your Honor. They confirm that Theodore Hartwell was whipping Winifred Hartwell when Isaac Bradley intervened. Theodore Hartwell was within his rights, why Pemberton argued. The woman is family. He was administering punishment for her adultery. With a bullwhip? Isaac demanded. She was bleeding in the snow. She could have died. Her baby could have died. What kind of man does that? The kind of man who has been grievously wronged, Pemberton shot back. The woman claims to carry Robert Hartwell's child, but the timing is suspicious. Theodore Hartwell has every reason to believe she was unfaithful to his son. That is a lie, a new voice called from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see Dr. Chen helping Winifred into the hall. She was pale and moving carefully, but her eyes blazed with determination. I never dishonored Robert. I loved him. The baby is his. This woman should not be here, Pemberton protested. She is not a party to these proceedings. Actually, she is the reason we are all here, Judge Morrison said. I will allow her to speak. Mrs. Hartwell, are you certain you are well enough to be out of bed? I am well enough to defend my honor and the memory of my husband, Winifred said. Dr. Chen helped her into a chair near the front. Theodore Hartwell has been lying about me since Robert died. He wants to steal my child's inheritance. He spread rumors that I was unfaithful to give himself an excuse to cut me off from the family money. When I refused to leave town quietly, he decided to punish me publicly. He hoped the humiliation would drive me away. These are serious accusations, Judge Morrison said. They are true accusations, Winifred replied. I can prove the baby is Robert's. I have letters he wrote to me, dated and discussing the pregnancy. I have witnesses who can testify that I was never alone with any other man. I was faithful to my husband in every way. Theodore stood up, his face red with anger. She is lying. The woman is an opportunist and a whore. Mr. Hartwell, sit down, Judge Morrison ordered. You will have your chance to speak. I do not need to listen to this, Theodore snarled. I am Theodore Hartwell. I built half this town. My money keeps the mines running, keeps people employed, and you are going to believe the word of some scheming woman over mine? I am going to listen to all the evidence before I make a decision, Judge Morrison said firmly. That is what justice requires. The hearing continued for another hour. Dr. Chen testified about Winifred's injuries and confirmed that the baby's development was consistent with her claims about the timing. Several townspeople reluctantly confirmed that Winifred had always been faithful to Robert and that Theodore had started the adultery rumors only after his son's death. Sheriff Dawson presented his findings, which supported Isaac's version of events. Through it all, Theodore grew increasingly agitated. His lawyer tried to salvage the case, but the evidence was clearly against them. Finally, Judge Morrison called for order. I have heard enough, the judge announced. Based on the testimony and evidence presented, I find that Isaac Bradley acted in defense of another person who was in immediate danger. Theodore Hartwell's actions in whipping Mrs. Hartwell were excessive and dangerous, particularly given her pregnant condition. While I understand Mr. Hartwell's grief over his son's death, that grief does not give him the right to inflict violence on others. This is an outrage, Theodore shouted. Mr. Hartwell, you will be silent or I will hold you in contempt, Judge Morrison said sharply. My ruling is that Isaac Bradley will not face trial for the shooting. He acted within his rights to protect Mrs. Hartwell. Furthermore, I am issuing a restraining order. Theodore Hartwell, you are not to approach or contact Winifred Hartwell in any way. If you violate this order, you will be arrested and jailed. Theodore's face turned purple. You cannot do this. I own this town. You do not own the law, Judge Morrison replied coldly, and you do not own me. This hearing is concluded. Theodore stormed out of the hall, his lawyer hurrying after him. Isaac felt relief wash over him, but he also felt uneasy. The look in Theodore's eyes as he left promised that this was far from over. Isaac went immediately to Winifred, who had slumped in her chair with exhaustion. You should not have come, he said gently. You need to rest. I had to, Winifred replied. I could not let Theodore lie about you the way he lied about me. You saved my life, Isaac. The least I could do was tell the truth. Dr. Chen helped them both back to his house. Winifred was running a slight fever again from the exertion, and the doctor insisted she return to bed immediately. Isaac sat with her while she rested, holding her hand and marveling at her courage. "You were magnificent in there," Isaac said softly. Winifred smiled weakly. "I was terrified, but I was also angry. Theodore has taken so much from me already. I was not going to let him take you too. He cannot hurt us anymore," Isaac said, though even as he spoke the words, he wondered if they were true. Over the next few days, Winifred slowly recovered her strength. The wounds on her back began to heal, though Dr. Chen warned they would leave scars. Isaac stayed close, helping the doctor care for her and running errands around town. He noticed the looks people gave him, some admiring, some wary. He had made a powerful enemy in Theodore Hartwell, and everyone knew it. A week after the hearing, Sheriff Dawson came to the doctor's house with troubling news. "Theodore is spreading word that he will pay $500 to anyone who runs Isaac Bradley out of town, or kills him if necessary. He is not saying it publicly, but the message is getting around." $500 is a fortune, Isaac said grimly. "That will attract every tough and gun hand in the territory." "I know," Sheriff Dawson said, "and there is not much I can do about it legally since he is being careful not to make direct threats. But I wanted to warn you. You should consider leaving Helena, at least until things cool down." Isaac looked at Winifred, who was sitting up in bed now, wrapped in a shawl. "I am not leaving her alone." "Then take her with you," the sheriff suggested. "Dr. Chen says she is well enough to travel now, as long as you take it easy and let her rest frequently." "Travel where?" Winifred asked. "I have nowhere to go." "We could head to Cheyenne," Isaac said slowly. "I have family there. My sisters would take you in, no questions asked. You would be safe." "Wyoming is a long journey in winter," Winifred said. "It is about 500 miles, Isaac agreed. "Normally I would say we could do it in 2 weeks, but with you recovering and the baby to consider, we should plan for 3 weeks, maybe a month. We would travel slow, stop often to rest." Winifred was quiet, her hand resting on her swollen belly. "I cannot ask you to do that. You have already done so much for me." "You are not asking," Isaac said. "I am offering. Winifred, I meant what I said before. Something happened to me when I saw you in that square. I cannot explain it, but I know I want to be part of your life, if you will let me. I want to help you raise your child. I want to build a future with you." Winifred's eyes filled with tears. "Isaac, you barely know me. You do not owe me anything." "This is not about owing," Isaac said. He took her hand. "When I look at you, I see someone brave and strong and beautiful. Someone who stood up to a powerful man and refused to be broken. Someone who risked her health to defend me in that hearing. I see someone I could love, Winifred. Someone I think I am already beginning to love." "I am carrying another man's child," Winifred whispered. "You are carrying Robert's child," Isaac corrected. "A child who deserves to be loved and protected. I can do that, if you will let me." Winifred closed her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I loved Robert so much. When he died, I thought I would never feel anything again. But when I woke up and saw you sitting beside me, saw the way you looked at me like I mattered, like I was worth saving." She opened her eyes and met Isaac's gaze. "I felt something stir in my heart. Something I thought had died with Robert." "You do not have to decide anything now," Isaac said. "We have time. But I think we should leave Helena soon, before Theodore makes good on his threats." "All right," Winifred agreed. "We will go to Cheyenne." They spent the next 2 days preparing for the journey. Isaac bought supplies, including warm clothes for Winifred, and a sturdy wagon with a covered bed where she could rest. Dr. Chen gave him medicine for pain and fever, and detailed instructions on how to care for Winifred during the trip. "The baby should be fine," Dr. Chen said. "But if she starts bleeding or goes into labor early, you need to find help immediately. Do not try to deliver the child yourself unless there is absolutely no other choice." "Understood," Isaac said. He paid the doctor double his usual fee over the man's protests. "You saved her life. I will not forget that." They left Helena before dawn on a cold December morning, hoping to slip away before anyone noticed. The wagon rolled slowly through the empty streets, the only sound the crunch of wheels on packed snow. Isaac drove while Winifred rested in the back, wrapped in blankets and furs. They had made perhaps 10 miles when Isaac heard riders behind them. He glanced back and saw 3 men on horseback, moving fast. His gut told him this was trouble. "Winifred, stay down and keep quiet," Isaac called back. He pulled the wagon to a stop and waited, his hand resting on the rifle beside him. The three men pulled up in a cloud of snow and steam. They were rough-looking characters, the kind who made their living on the wrong side of the law. The leader, a man with a scarred face and cold eyes, nodded to Isaac. "Morning," the man said. "You would be Isaac Bradley." "I might be," Isaac replied cautiously. "No need to play games. Theodore Hartwell sent us. He wants you dead, and he is paying good money to make it happen. Now, you seem like a decent fellow, so I am going to give you a choice. You can turn around, head back to Helena, and leave on foot. We will take the wagon, the woman, and your supplies as payment for our trouble. Or you can refuse, and we will kill you and take everything anyway." Isaac's mind raced. He could try to fight, but 3 against 1 were bad odds, especially with Winifred in the wagon behind him. He needed to buy time, create an opportunity. "Let me talk to the woman," Isaac said. "She should have a say in this." The scarred man laughed. "The woman does not get a say, but go ahead, tell her goodbye." Isaac climbed down from the wagon, moving slowly and carefully. He went to the back and pulled aside the canvas cover. Winifred looked up at him with frightened eyes. "They are here for me," Isaac said quietly. "Theodore sent them. I need you to trust me. When I give the signal, I want you to cover your ears and stay down no matter what you hear. Can you do that?" Winifred nodded, her face pale. Isaac climbed back to the front of the wagon. "She wants to stay with me," he announced. The scarred man shrugged. "Her funeral. Boys, kill him." Isaac moved fast. He grabbed the rifle and fired at the nearest rider, catching him in the chest. The man fell from his horse with a cry. Isaac dove off the wagon as the other 2 drew their guns, rolling through the snow and coming up behind the wagon for cover. Bullets splintered the wood above his head. Isaac fired again, clipping the second rider in the leg. The man cursed and wheeled his horse around. The scarred man was more cautious, using his horse as a shield, while he tried to get a clear shot at Isaac. "You are just making this harder on yourself," the scarred man called. "Give up now, and maybe I will let the woman live." Isaac did not bother responding. He was counting bullets, calculating angles. He had maybe 3 shots left in the rifle. He needed to make them count. The scarred man made his mistake by getting impatient. He spurred his horse forward, trying to circle around the wagon. Isaac stepped out and fired, the bullet catching the man in the shoulder and spinning him from his saddle. He hit the ground hard and did not move. The wounded second rider had managed to control his horse and was lining up another shot when a rifle cracked from an unexpected direction. The rider jerked and fell, a bloom of red spreading across his chest. Isaac spun around to see Winifred kneeling in the back of the wagon, holding his spare rifle. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were steady. "I told you to stay down," Isaac said, rushing to the wagon. "You also told me to trust you," Winifred replied. "I trusted you to keep us alive, and I trusted myself to help if needed." She lowered the rifle carefully. "Is it over?" Isaac checked the 3 men. 2 were dead, and the scarred man was unconscious but breathing. "It is over," he confirmed. He climbed into the wagon and pulled Winifred into his arms, feeling her shake with delayed shock. "You saved my life." "You saved mine first," Winifred said against his chest. "I suppose we are even now." Isaac held her until her shaking stopped, then carefully bandaged the scarred man's shoulder. "What are you doing?" Winifred asked. "He tried to kill you." "And he will face justice for that," Isaac said. "But I am not a murderer. If he lives, he can tell the law what Theodore hired him to do." They loaded the unconscious man into the back of the wagon and continued on, pushing hard to put distance between themselves and Helena. That evening, they stopped at a small ranch, where Isaac convinced the owner to take the scarred man to the sheriff with a written statement of what had happened. "Theodore Hartwell is going to answer for this," the rancher promised. "Hiring killers crosses every line. Even his money will not save him from those charges." They traveled on, moving slowly southward through Montana toward Wyoming. The journey was hard, with bitter cold and frequent snowstorms, but they persevered. Each night they made camp, and Isaac would help Winifred from the wagon, make sure she was comfortable and warm, prepare food over a small fire. They talked during those long evenings, sharing stories about their lives. Winifred told Isaac about growing up as an only child, about losing her parents and making her own way as a teacher. She spoke about meeting Robert, about their courtship and marriage, about the happiness they had shared in their brief time together. He was gentle, Winifred said one night, staring into the fire. Always kind, always thoughtful. He used to bring me wildflowers for no reason, just because he knew I liked them. When he died in that mine collapse, it felt like the world ended. The only thing that kept me going was knowing I carried part of him inside me. She touched her belly. This baby is my last connection to Robert. I will never stop loving him. I would never ask you to, Isaac said quietly. Robert was your husband, the father of your child. He will always be part of your life. I am not trying to replace him, Winifred. I am just hoping to be someone new, someone who can walk beside you into whatever comes next. Winifred looked at him, her eyes reflecting the firelight. How did you get so wise? I am not wise, Isaac said. I am just a cowboy who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Or maybe the wrong place at the wrong time, depending on how you look at it. He smiled. But I do not regret a single moment, Winifred. Not the shooting, not the hearing, not the men who attacked us. Because all of it led to being here with you, and I cannot regret that. As they traveled further from Helena, Winifred grew stronger. Her wounds continued to heal, and the constant fear that had haunted her began to fade. She laughed more easily, smiled more often. Isaac found himself falling deeper in love with her with each passing day. They reached the Wyoming border after 2 weeks of travel and stopped in a small town called Silver Creek to resupply. While Isaac was loading provisions, Winifred wandered into the general store and came out holding a newspaper. Isaac, look at this, she said, showing him the front page. The headline read, Helena mine owner arrested for hiring killers. Isaac read the article quickly. Theodore Hartwell had been arrested based on the testimony of the scarred man, who had survived and told the sheriff everything. Theodore was being held in jail awaiting trial on charges of attempted murder and conspiracy. His business interests were being seized to pay damages. It is over, Winifred breathed. He cannot hurt us anymore. It is over, Isaac agreed, pulling her into a careful embrace. They continued south, and Isaac sent a telegram ahead to his sisters in Cheyenne, explaining the situation and asking if they could take in a guest. The response came back immediately. Bring her home. We cannot wait to meet her. They reached Cheyenne 3 weeks after leaving Helena, arriving on a cold January afternoon. Isaac's sisters, Sarah and Margaret, came running out of the house when they saw the wagon, not even bothering to put on coats despite the freezing weather. Isaac! Sarah, the older sister, threw her arms around him. We were so worried. Your telegram did not tell us half of what you have been through. I did not want to worry you, Isaac said, returning the hug. He turned to help Winifred from the wagon. Sarah, Margaret, this is Winifred Zimmerman. Winifred, my sisters. Zimmerman? Margaret asked, her sharp eyes taking in Winifred's pregnant belly. Not Hartwell? I am reclaiming my maiden name, Winifred said firmly. I want nothing more to do with the Hartwell family. Good for you, Sarah said warmly. Come inside before you freeze. Isaac, get those supplies. We will get Winifred settled. The sisters whisked Winifred into the house, leaving Isaac to unload the wagon and stable the horses. By the time he came inside, Winifred was installed in a comfortable chair by the fire, wrapped in blankets and drinking hot tea. Your sisters are wonderful, Winifred said when Isaac sat down beside her. They have been asking me all sorts of questions about you. And what have you told them? Isaac asked, amused. That you are brave and kind and stubborn as a mule, Winifred said. That you saved my life and then refused to leave my side, even when it would have been safer to do so. Sounds about right, Margaret said from the kitchen doorway. Our brother never did have any sense when it came to lost causes. Winifred is not a lost cause, Isaac said firmly. Of course she is not, Sarah agreed, coming to sit on Winifred's other side. We can see that just by looking at her. Isaac, you did well. Over the next few weeks, Winifred settled into life with Isaac's family. Sarah and Margaret treated her like a sister, helping her prepare for the baby and making her feel welcome. Isaac found work at a nearby ranch, earning money to support them all. He and Winifred grew closer during that time. They would sit together in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing. Isaac told her about his dreams of owning his own ranch someday, of having cattle and horses and wide-open land. Winifred shared her love of teaching, her hope that she could return to it someday after the baby was old enough. You could teach our children, Isaac said one evening. He had not meant to say our children, but the words slipped out naturally. Winifred looked at him, her expression soft. Our children? Isaac took her hand. I know it is too soon to be making plans like that. You are still grieving Robert, and the baby is not even born yet. But Winifred, I love you. I have loved you since the moment I saw you in that town square. And I want a future with you, if you will have me. Winifred was quiet for a long moment, her hand resting in his. Isaac, I do not know how to explain what I feel. Part of me still loves Robert and always will. But there is another part of me, a growing part, that feels something new when I look at you, something warm and safe and right. I do not know if it is love yet, but I think it could be. I think it might already be starting. That is enough for now, Isaac said. We have time. Winifred's baby was born on a snowy February night. The labor was long and difficult, and Isaac paced the floor downstairs while Sarah and Margaret attended to her, with a midwife Sarah had hired to help. When he finally heard the baby's cry, Isaac rushed upstairs to find Winifred, exhausted but smiling, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. It is a boy, Winifred said softly. A son. Isaac approached carefully, looking down at the small red face. He is beautiful. What will you name him? Robert, Winifred said. After his father, but... She looked up at Isaac with tears in her eyes. I would like his middle name to be Isaac, if that is all right with you. Isaac felt his throat tighten with emotion. I would be honored. Little Robert, Isaac grew quickly, a healthy baby with his mother's dark hair and a loud voice that kept the household awake at night. Isaac found himself falling in love with the baby almost as quickly as he had fallen for Winifred. He helped with feedings, changed diapers, walked the floor with Robert when he was fussy. Sarah and Margaret teased him about being a natural father. I do not know about natural, Isaac said, bouncing Robert gently while Winifred rested. But I am trying my best. That is all anyone can do, Sarah said warmly. Spring came to Wyoming, bringing warmer weather and new hope. Isaac had saved enough money to make a down payment on a small ranch about 20 miles from Cheyenne. It was not much, just 100 acres with a modest house and barn, but it was a start. What do you think? Isaac asked Winifred, showing her the property on a warm April afternoon. I know it is not fancy, but it has good water and decent grazing. We could build something here. Winifred looked around at the rolling prairie, the distant mountains, the endless sky. Baby Robert was asleep in her arms, content and peaceful. It is perfect, she said. But Isaac, this is your dream. Are you certain you want to share it with me? Isaac took her face in his hands gently. Winifred, I do not want anything if it does not include you. These past few months, watching you heal, seeing you with Robert, falling asleep each night, knowing you are safe under the same roof, it has been the happiest time of my life. I love you. I love Robert. I want to marry you, adopt Robert as my own son, and build a life here together. Isaac, Winifred whispered, tears streaming down her face. I know you still love Robert Sr., Isaac continued. I am not asking you to forget him or stop loving him. But is there room in your heart for me too? Can you see a future with me? Winifred set the baby carefully in the wagon, then turned back to Isaac and kissed him. It was their first real kiss, soft and sweet and full of promise. When she pulled back, she was smiling through her tears. Yes, she said simply. Yes to all of it. I do love you, Isaac. I think I started falling in love with you that first day when I woke up and saw you sitting beside my bed, looking at me like I was someone precious, like I mattered. And watching you with Robert, seeing how gentle you are with him, how much you care, it just made me love you more. Isaac kissed her again, longer this time, pouring all his feelings into it. When they finally broke apart, they were both laughing, giddy with joy and relief. They were married in May, in a simple ceremony at the church in Cheyenne, with Sarah and Margaret as witnesses. Winifred wore a simple blue dress, and Isaac wore his best suit. Baby Robert, now 3 months old, gurgled happily throughout the ceremony. After the wedding, they moved to the ranch. Isaac threw himself into the work, building up their herd and improving the property. Winifred took care of Robert and gradually started teaching again, offering lessons to children from nearby ranches who came to their home twice a week. Life was not always easy. The work was hard, the winters were harsh, and money was often tight. But they were happy. Isaac would come in from working the cattle to find Winifred teaching a group of children. baby Robert playing on a blanket nearby, and feel his heart swell with love and contentment. Robert grew into a bright, curious toddler who followed Isaac everywhere, calling him Papa from his first words. Isaac legally adopted him, and Robert became Robert Isaac Bradley in all official documents. The boy knew about his birth father, Robert Hartwell, and Winifred made sure he understood that his first father had been a good man who had loved him even before he was born. But Isaac was Papa, the man who raised him and taught him and loved him every day. 2 years after their marriage, Winifred gave birth to a daughter they named Isabel. She had Isaac's green eyes and Winifred's dark hair, and both parents were immediately besotted with her. Robert, now almost 3, was fascinated by his baby sister and wanted to help with everything. "Gentle," Isaac would remind him when Robert tried to pat Isabel's head. "She is very small." "I am gentle, Papa," Robert would insist, then proceed to pat the baby with all the gentleness a 3-year-old could manage, which was not very gentle at all. More children followed. A second son named Daniel was born when Isabel was 2, and then twin girls, Emma and Eleanor, arrived 3 years after that. The house, which had seemed too big when Isaac first bought the property, was suddenly bursting at the seams with children and noise and life. Isaac expanded the ranch steadily, buying more land and cattle as he could afford it. By their 10th anniversary, the Bradley Ranch was one of the most successful in the region. But Isaac measured his success by different standards than money or land. He measured it in Winifred's smile when she looked at him across the dinner table, in the sound of their children's laughter, in the sense of peace he felt when he woke each morning with Winifred beside him. They received word about Theodore Hartwell, occasionally through letters from friends still in Montana. He had been convicted of attempted murder and spent 5 years in prison. When he was released, broken and bitter, he tried to reclaim his businesses, but found that no one wanted to work with him anymore. He died alone a few years later, unmourned and forgotten. "I should probably feel something about that," Winifred said when they heard the news. "But I do not. He stopped being real to me a long time ago. All I feel is grateful that he failed to destroy us." "He never had a chance," Isaac said, putting his arm around her. "You are stronger than he ever knew." Robert grew up to be a fine young man, smart and capable. He knew the story of how Isaac had saved his mother, how his birth father had died before he was born, and how the man who raised him had chosen to love him, even though they shared no blood. When Robert was 18, he sat down with Isaac one evening and told him something he had been thinking about for a long time. "Papa, I want you to know that I have never felt like anything less than your son," Robert said. "You raised me, taught me everything I know, loved me even when I was difficult. You are my father in every way that matters." Isaac felt his eyes sting with tears. "You have always been my son, Robert. From the moment I first held you as a baby, I knew you were mine." "I know," Robert said, "but I wanted to say it out loud. I wanted you to know that I understand what you did for Ma and for me. You gave up everything, risked your life, changed your whole future because you saw someone who needed help and you could not walk away. That is the kind of man I want to be." "You already are that kind of man," Isaac said, gripping his son's shoulder. "I am proud of you, Robert." The years passed in a blur of work and family and love. Isaac and Winifred celebrated their 20th anniversary surrounded by their children and grandchildren. Robert had married a local girl and given them 2 grandchildren already. Isabel was engaged to a young teacher from Cheyenne. Daniel was working as a deputy sheriff, following in the footsteps of the man who had helped save his parents all those years ago. The twins were still at home, bright 15-year-olds who kept their parents on their toes. Isaac looked at Winifred across the anniversary dinner table, seeing the silver threading through her dark hair, the lines around her eyes from years of smiling, the grace and beauty that had only deepened with time. She caught him looking and smiled, that same smile that had been warming his heart for 2 decades. Later that night, after the guests had left and the children were in bed, Isaac and Winifred sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching the stars come out over the prairie. Winifred leaned against Isaac's shoulder, comfortable and content. "Do you ever think about that day in Helena?" Winifred asked quietly. "About how different our lives would be if you had just ridden past?" "Sometimes," Isaac admitted, "but only to thank God that I did not. Meeting you, Winifred, building this life with you, it has been the greatest adventure of my life. I would not change a single moment." Not even the part where you got shot at by hired killers? Winifred teased. Not even that, Isaac said, kissing the top of her head. It makes for a good story, at least. The children love hearing about it, Winifred agreed, especially the part where I shot that man to save you. Emma told her teacher that her mother was the best shot in Wyoming. Isaac laughed. Well, you did save my life, and you are a pretty good shot. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the night deepen around them. The ranch was quiet except for the sound of cattle lowing in the distance, and the occasional whinny from the horses in the barn. Isaac, Winifred said softly, thank you. For what? For everything. For saving me. For loving me. For loving Robert as your own son. For giving me more children, a home, a life I never dreamed I could have after Robert Sr. died. You gave me hope when I had none. You gave me love when I thought I would never feel it again. You gave me everything. Isaac turned to look at her, seeing the tears glistening in her eyes. You gave me just as much, Winifred. You gave me a purpose, a family, a reason to be better than I was. Before I met you, I was just drifting through life, working ranches, saving money, not really living. You made me want to build something, to be someone, to leave a legacy. Everything good in my life started the day I rode into Helena. We were lucky, Winifred said. We were blessed, Isaac corrected, and I plan to spend every remaining day of my life being grateful for it. He kissed her then, a kiss that held 20 years of love and partnership and devotion. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. Come on, Isaac said, standing and offering Winifred his hand. Let us go to bed. Tomorrow is Sunday, and you know the twins will have us up early for church. Winifred took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. They walked into the house together, hand in hand, the way they had walked through life for the past 20 years, the way they would continue to walk for all the years to come. Inside, the house was quiet, their children all safely asleep. Isaac checked on each of them out of habit, making sure the twins were covered, that Daniel's window was not open too wide, letting in the cold night air. He stopped at the photographs on the wall, pictures of their family through the years. There was one of Winifred holding baby Robert, taken just months after they had arrived in Cheyenne, another of their wedding day, both of them looking young and hopeful, a family portrait from 5 years ago, with all 5 children arranged around them. But his favorite was a sketch that Isabel had done when she was 12. It showed Isaac and Winifred standing together in front of their ranch house, his arm around her shoulders, her head leaning on his chest. Beneath it, Isabel had written in her careful schoolgirl script, Mama and Papa, love always. That is still my favorite, Winifred said, coming to stand beside him. Isabel captured something true in that drawing, the way we fit together. We do fit, Isaac agreed, like we were made for each other. Maybe we were, Winifred said. Maybe God knew, even back in that terrible moment in the snow, that we were meant to find each other, that you would save me and I would save you, and together we would build something beautiful. I like that thought, Isaac said, pulling her close, that even in the darkest moments there is purpose, that suffering can lead to joy. They went to their bedroom, the same room they had shared for 20 years. The bed was old but comfortable, worn in all the right places. They undressed quietly and climbed under the quilts, and Isaac pulled Winifred into his arms the way he did every night. I love you, Winifred whispered in the darkness. I love you too, Isaac replied, always and forever. They fell asleep that way, wrapped in each other's arms, secure in their love and their life together. Outside, the wind whispered across the prairie, carrying the scent of sage and grass and the promise of another day on the ranch they had built together. The years continued to pass, bringing more grandchildren and new challenges. Isaac's hair turned fully gray, and he moved a little slower in the mornings, but his love for Winifred never wavered. She remained the center of his world, the reason he got up each day and worked the ranch with his sons. When Isaac was 52 and Winifred was 48, they took a trip back to Montana, something they had talked about doing for years, but never found the time for. They rode the train to Helena, curious to see how the town had changed in the decades since they had fled. Helena was bigger now, more prosperous, with paved streets and electric lights. But the town square was still there, and Isaac found himself standing on the exact spot where he had seen Winifred bound and bleeding all those years ago. It seems like a different life, Winifred said, holding his arm. Like it happened to different people. We were different people, Isaac said. Young, scared, just starting out. Look at us now. Old and gray, Winifred joked. Experienced and distinguished, Isaac corrected with a grin. And still madly in love. They visited Robert Sr.'s grave while they were in Helena. Winifred had brought flowers, and she placed them on the headstone carefully. Isaac stood back, giving her privacy for her moment with her first husband. I told him about our life, Winifred said when she rejoined Isaac. About the ranch, about our children, about how happy we are. I hope he knows. I hope he is glad that I found love again. I am sure he is, Isaac said. Any man who loved you would want you to be happy. They returned to Wyoming feeling like they had closed a circle. The past was honored and remembered, but it no longer had power over them. They were free to live fully in the present, to enjoy the life they had built together. Isaac's sisters remained part of their lives until the end. Sarah passed away peacefully in her sleep at 70, and Margaret followed 2 years later. Isaac mourned them deeply, but he was grateful for all the years they had given him and Winifred, for the way they had welcomed Winifred into the family without hesitation, for the love they had shown his children. Robert took over most of the day-to-day running of the ranch as Isaac grew older. It was Robert's by rights anyway, the eldest son. Annie ran it well, expanding the herd and modernizing the operation. But Isaac still rode out each morning to check on the cattle, needing to feel useful, to stay connected to the land he loved. On Isaac's 60th birthday, the entire family gathered for a celebration. All 5 children were there with their spouses and children. The house was filled with noise and laughter and love. After dinner, Robert stood up to make a toast. To my father, Robert said, raising his glass. The bravest, kindest, most stubborn man I have ever known. He saved my mother's life before I was even born. He raised me as his own son, never once making me feel like I was anything less than his. He built this ranch with his own 2 hands and raised 5 children here, teaching us all the value of hard work, integrity, and love. Papa, you have been my hero since I was old enough to understand what a hero was. Thank you for everything. Isaac felt tears streaming down his face as his children and grandchildren raised their glasses. Winifred squeezed his hand, her own eyes wet. I just did what any man would do, Isaac managed to say. No, Robert said firmly. You did what most men would not have the courage to do. You stood up when others looked away. You protected the helpless. You built a family on love instead of blood. That is not what any man would do, Papa. That is what an exceptional man does. The celebration continued late into the night, and Isaac found himself surrounded by love and family and gratitude. He looked at Winifred across the crowded room and saw her looking back at him with the same expression she had worn on their wedding day. Love, pure and simple and eternal. Isaac lived to be 72 years old. He died peacefully in his sleep on a warm summer night, with Winifred beside him where she had been for over 40 years. His last words to her were, I love you, the same words he had said every day of their marriage. Winifred grieved him deeply, but found comfort in their children and grandchildren. She lived another 8 years, staying on the ranch that she and Isaac had built together. She spent her days teaching her grandchildren to read, telling them stories about their grandfather, about the day he had saved her life in a snowy town square so long ago. When Winifred finally passed away at 80, she was buried beside Isaac on a hill overlooking the ranch. Their tombstone read simply, Isaac Bradley and Winifred Bradley, together in life, together in eternity. Robert, now an old man himself with gray hair and grandchildren of his own, stood at his parents' graves after the funeral. His siblings stood with him, and they linked hands as they had his children. They had a good life, Isabel said softly. A happy life. They had a great love, Daniel added. The kind of love people write stories about. They had each other, Robert said, and that was all they ever needed. The 5 Bradley children stood together on that hill, looking out over the ranch their parents had built, thinking about the courage it had taken to create all of this from a single moment of bravery in a Montana town square. They thought about Isaac riding into Helena that frozen morning, about his choice to stop and help a stranger, about how that one decision had changed everything. They thought about Winifred's strength, about how she had survived and healed and loved again, about the family she had raised and the legacy she had left. And they understood, perhaps for the first time fully, what their parents had always tried to teach them. That love is not just a feeling, it is a choice. A choice to stand up when it would be easier to look away. A choice to stay when it would be safer to run. A choice to build when it would be simpler to remain alone. Isaac and Winifred had made those choices every day of their life together, and in doing so, they had created something that would last far beyond their own lives. A family bound by love, a ranch built on hard work and dedication, a legacy of courage and compassion that would be passed down through generations. The sun was setting over the Wyoming prairie, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The Bradley Ranch stretched out below them, peaceful and prosperous, alive with the sounds of cattle and horses and family. Inside the house, the next generation of Bradleys was already growing up, learning the values their great-grandparents had instilled. And on that hill, watching over it all, Isaac and Winifred Bradley rested together at last. Their story had ended, but the love they had created lived on. It lived in their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. It lived in the ranch they had built and the land they had tended. It lived in the courage they had shown and the choices they had made. Their love had started in blood and snow, in a moment of terrible violence and beautiful bravery. But it had grown into something magnificent, something worth celebrating, something worth remembering. On the tombstone, someone had added a final line beneath their names. The family did not know who had carved it there, but they all agreed it was perfect. He saved her in the snow. She saved him right back. Together, they saved each other every day for the rest of their lives. And that was the truth of Isaac and Winifred Bradley. Two people who had found each other in the worst moment imaginable and had turned that moment into a lifetime of love. Two people who proved that even in darkness, there is light. Even in cruelty, there is kindness. Even in despair, there is hope. Their story became legend in Wyoming. Parents told it to their children as an example of true love and courage. Young couples starting out would visit the Bradley Ranch, now run by the fourth generation of the family, and asked to see the hill where Isaac and Winifred were buried. They would stand there, hand in hand, and make promises to each other about the kind of love they wanted to build. The house where Isaac and Winifred had raised their family still stood, lovingly maintained by their descendants. Inside, photographs lined the walls, documenting the history of a family that had started with one brave choice on a frozen morning. And sometimes, on winter evenings when the snow fell soft and silent over the Wyoming prairie, people swore they could see two figures standing on that hill, a man and a woman, hand in hand, looking out over the land they had loved, looking out over the family they had created, looking out over the legacy they had left. Some said it was just tricks of light and shadow, the way snow could create illusions. But others knew better. Others knew that a love like Isaac and Winifred's could never truly end. It would go on forever, woven into the very fabric of the land, passed down through generations, living in every act of courage and kindness their descendants performed. The story of the cowboy who killed the man and carried her bleeding to safety became more than just a story. It became a testament to the power of love to transform lives, to create families, to build futures. It became proof that one person's choice to do the right thing, even at great personal cost, could change the world. And in a way, Isaac and Winifred had changed the world. Maybe not the whole world, but they had changed their world, and the world of their children, and their children's children. They had taken darkness and turned it into light. They had taken cruelty and answered it with kindness. They had taken death and created life. That was their legacy. That was their love story. And it would never be forgotten as long as the Bradley family existed, as long as the ranch stood on the Wyoming prairie, as long as people believed in the power of one person to make a difference. Isaac had ridden into Helena, Montana, on that frozen December morning in 1881, looking for work and a chance at a better life. He had found something infinitely more valuable. He had found his purpose. He had found his family. He had found his love. And Winifred, bleeding in the snow, bound and helpless, had found her salvation. Not just physical salvation from the whip and the cold, but salvation of the soul. She had found someone who saw her worth, who fought for her, who chose her. She had found someone to share her life with, to raise her children with, to grow old with. Together, they had found everything that mattered. Together, they had created a love story for the ages. And though their time on earth was finished, their story lived on. It lived in the land they had worked, in the family they had raised, in the hearts of everyone who heard their tale and was inspired by it. The sun set fully over the Bradley ranch, and darkness fell across the prairie. But it was not a fearful darkness. It was the gentle darkness of evening, full of promise and rest. And on the hill where Isaac and Winifred rested, peace reigned eternal. Their work was done. Their love had triumphed. Their story was complete, and it was beautiful.